I almost died, lost my ability to walk, and spent half a year in hospitals fighting sepsis and malnutrition, while my boyfriend blew $7,000 thousands on fast food, withheld rent, and slowly abandoned me when I needed him most. I'm a 36 female and my boyfriend is 37 male. We've been together for 4 years as of this past Christmas, and we've officially lived together for a little over 3 years. Writing this feels exhausting, but I need to lay it all out because the last half year of my life has been nothing short of a nightmare, and I honestly don't recognize my relationship anymore. Starting in June, everything fell apart health-wise. I had severe complications from multiple surgeries, complications that escalated so badly that I ended up on TPN. On what I thought was the last day of one hospital stay, my doctor called me and told me he'd found a hernia and that I would need yet another surgery. That was surgery number 5. I remember just staring at my phone, feeling numb because my body already felt like it had been through a war. In August, things got worse. I was hospitalized for 20 days straight, and that stay included my 6th surgery. This one was major. After it, I couldn't tolerate solid food at all, and I couldn't walk. I went from being an independent adult to someone who couldn't eat, couldn't stand on her own, and couldn't trust her body to do the most basic things. Since then, every single month except December, I've been hospitalized again for over a week at a time. Severe sepsis. Severe protein malnutrition. Complications that just keep stacking on top of each other like my body never gets a chance to recover before the next crisis hits. Financially, it's been terrifying. I've managed to get rent covered every single month through nonprofits, which I'm incredibly grateful for, but that doesn't erase the stress or the humiliation of needing that kind of help. People around me kept asking the same question over and over. How is it that your relationship has always been 50-50 financially, but now you're still covering bills, handling food stamps, and somehow subsidizing him when you're the one who can barely eat? The food stamp situation alone is surreal. I can't intake solid food, I live off protein shakes, so the groceries pile up and he benefits from them while I physically can't. He's been working 2 jobs, and because of that, he's barely around. I understand working, I really do, but there's a difference between working to support a household and emotionally checking out while your partner's life is literally unraveling. I asked him to pay me half the rent for just 4 months instead of 5. Not forever. Just 4 months. Given that my life had abruptly changed, my health was collapsing, and the stress was overwhelming even on what I thought was a strong relationship, I didn't think that was an unreasonable ask. I've also been doing everything I can to think long-term, even while sick. I filed for bankruptcy to wipe out mostly medical debt and about $10,000 in credit card debt. Being borderline poor in America while dealing with complex medical issues is honestly the stuff of nightmares. It's brutal, dehumanizing, and constant. I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy. I did this not just for myself, but because I believed I was protecting our future too. On top of all that, I've been encouraging him to seek some custody of his son. He has nothing saved for him, no real plan, and I've tried to be supportive, to think about the bigger picture, to push him toward being more involved and responsible as a parent. Ironically, I'm writing this while I'm sitting in the living room with his son, because my boyfriend cried when I asked for some space after finding out how unsupported and overwhelmed I feel. Instead of getting that space, I'm once again swallowing my own needs to comfort everyone else. Here's where everything finally cracked for me. I recently found out that my boyfriend has spent over $7,000 on fast food. Not over the course of years. Not slowly over time. But within a relatively short window, while I've been fighting for my life, in and out of hospitals, living on protein shakes, and barely able to stand or walk on my own. When I reacted with shock and anger, he didn't apologize. He didn't even pause to reflect. He got angry at me for being upset. What makes this sting even more is that the groceries either I buy for him or that he picks up himself routinely rot in the fridge. Food goes bad because most days I am too exhausted, too weak, or physically incapable of doing a full fridge clean out. My home health aide hasn't even started yet, and he absolutely does not clean it. Ever. I've justified this to myself again and again with "he works all the time," as if that somehow cancels out the fact that I am sick, disabled, and trapped inside a body that no longer cooperates. But then the reality hit me in a way I couldn't ignore anymore. He hasn't paid rent since June. Not a single month. When I actually sat down and did the math, he has paid less than what he would owe if he were contributing even partially. Meanwhile, he somehow had $7,000 available for drive-through meals and takeout. And when I confronted him about this imbalance, he saw nothing wrong with it. That was the moment I asked the question that's been echoing in my head ever since. Even if I wasn't here, you have nothing saved for your son? Nothing? What happens if his car breaks down and I'm not around to step in? To call corporate? To fight customer service? To confirm that his $5,000 car is actually covered under warranty? Because that's what happens now. That's always been my role. I'm the planner, the fixer, the one who anticipates disasters before they happen, all while being malnourished, disabled, and chronically ill. And that realization shattered me. The man I love, the man I've envisioned a future with, is not functioning like an adult in his actions. Not financially, not practically, and increasingly, not emotionally. What hurts even more is that I've been trying to be honest lately about how isolated and lonely I feel. I've told him how depressed some days get, how terrifying it is to be trapped in a body that went from hiking in April to struggling to stand, eat, or shower independently. I told him how much I miss my family and how painful it is that I can't visit them like I used to. My world has shrunk to hospital rooms, appointments, and recovery cycles that never seem to end. Later that same day, while I was struggling just to clean myself properly in the shower, sitting on a shower bench, trying not to cry from exhaustion and frustration, his response to everything I had shared earlier was, "Oh wow, guess we can't have sex anymore." There was no sarcasm, no joking tone, no indication that it was meant lightly. It landed like a punch to the chest. After opening up about my loneliness, my body failing me, and how overwhelmed I feel, that was where his focus went. When I told him how deeply that hurt, he broke down. He cried. He apologized repeatedly and said he never meant it that way. I believe that he felt remorse, but I can't stop thinking about the fact that those words came out of him at all. Now I'm sitting with everything at once. The medical trauma, the financial imbalance, the realization that I'm carrying far more than my body or mind can handle, the love I still feel for him, the fear of being alone, and the growing, terrifying question that won't leave me. Is this financial irresponsibility, or something deeper? Am I missing his side entirely? Or am I finally waking up to the reality that love isn't enough when one person is drowning and the other refuses to learn how to swim, or even admit the water is rising? Update. This is long. I'm exhausted, physically and emotionally, so I'm using talk to text and doing my best to make sure it translates what I actually mean. I apologize in advance if some parts are messy. Honestly, that feels representative of my brain right now anyway. First, thank you to everyone who took the time to respond. I've read everything, even if I haven't replied to all of it. A lot of what was said was hard to hear, but necessary. To clarify some questions about our living situation and finances, technically, he does not live with me. He applied to be added to the apartment and was rejected by the complex. He's not on the lease. He isn't here consistently, and he doesn't contribute much financially. So while we've emotionally treated this like a shared household, legally and practically, it really hasn't been. I tried to explain to him that, strictly speaking, the money itself isn't the core issue. He's right in the sense that it is his money. We aren't married, and he can spend it however he wants. Especially considering that before June, when I was working full-time, we were still basically living paycheck to paycheck. I'm not trying to control his finances or claim ownership over them. What I can't get past is the hiding, the dishonesty. The fact that while I was at my most vulnerable, hospitalized, malnourished, unable to walk properly, living off protein shakes, he was going out to restaurants constantly while telling me he was working 2 jobs for our future. That narrative completely falls apart when I learned that thousands of dollars were spent on fast food instead. What hurts is not just the money. It's that when I needed him the most, he abandoned me emotionally, physically, and in so many practical ways. He wasn't present. He wasn't supportive. And when I tried to express how lonely, isolated, and scared I felt, it somehow always circled back to his frustration or inconvenience. Tonight, he's sleeping in another bed. He brought up that he's considering whether we even want the relationship anymore, because I'm obviously unhappy and he feels like he's unable to meet my expectations. That conversation could have turned into a blow-up. Instead, I told him I love him. I told him I hope he sleeps well. And then I said something that surprised even me with how calm it felt coming out of my mouth. I told him that when the lease is up in July, I think it's best that we don't live together anymore. Not necessarily that we break up immediately, but that we stop forcing a situation that clearly isn't healthy right now. I told him that if we both want to make it work after that, we can choose to spend our free time intentionally rebuilding. That would mean being honest about what we've both done or failed to do, taking responsibility, and addressing what each of us actually needs for a relationship to be healthy and sustainable. And if that doesn't happen, if it turns out that we can't meet each other where we are, then I will still love him, and I will still root for his happiness, even if it's not with me. That's a massive shift for me, because I used to say that my love for him meant I would never leave, that I would endure anything as long as we kept communicating. I believed that staying no matter what was proof of commitment. Now I'm starting to understand that staying at the cost of myself isn't love, it's self-abandonment. A lot of people mentioned codependency in the comments. I'll be honest. At first, I bristled at that. But the more I've been reading, the more it hits painfully close to home. The idea that my sense of safety, purpose, and worth became wrapped up in fixing, supporting, and holding everything together, even while my body was literally breaking down. I'm still young in this realization. I'm not claiming to fully understand it yet, but it explains so much. Why I've tolerated imbalance, why I've minimized my needs, why I've felt responsible for his stability while barely surviving myself. As far as why I've stayed this long, I've been asking myself that question over and over. I don't think there's a single clean answer. I think it's layered, messy, and uncomfortable to admit. In the beginning, he was the first man who was genuinely kind to me. He opened doors. He encouraged me. He told me I was strong, capable, smart. He made me feel seen and supported in a way I hadn't really experienced before. And I think somewhere along the way, I confused being loved with the person he appeared to be at the start. Whether he was pretending on purpose or whether that version of him was real at the time and faded later, I honestly don't know. But I kept holding on to the belief that that version of him would come back if I just waited long enough, loved hard enough, stayed patient enough. And the truth is, I'm tired. I am so deeply bone tired. I live in constant pain. My body feels like it's betraying me daily. Getting through an average day already takes everything I have. Some days are so rough that I barely have the energy to eat, to shower, to exist, let alone step back and objectively analyze my relationship. When you're this exhausted, sometimes you don't miss red flags so much as you simply don't have the strength to look up. I don't think people understand how brutal prolonged illness is, not just physically, but mentally. It shrinks your world. Your priorities become survival. Your tolerance for discomfort shifts in ways that aren't always healthy. And I know deeply that being in a bad mental state actively harms your physical healing. The brain and body are completely intertwined. Living in constant stress, disappointment, and emotional neglect doesn't just hurt my heart, it hurts my recovery. I want to be very clear about something. This situation is horrific. I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy. Being sick, financially vulnerable, emotionally abandoned, and still trying to hold space for someone else's feelings is an impossible position to be in. And yet, I've been doing it. I do have a medical team. I'm not doing this alone. I see multiple doctors and mental health professionals. I'm in therapy weekly, every Wednesday, and I plan to be completely honest with my therapist about what's really going on. No minimizing. No protecting him. No pretending I'm fine when I'm not. I owe myself that much. As far as stability goes, I'm cautiously optimistic. I'm a planner by nature, always have been. I need contingency plans to feel safe. And while nothing is guaranteed, I'm fairly confident I've secured a place to stay again. It's January, so yes, things can change, but I should know very shortly within the next few days. That alone gives me a small sense of grounding I haven't had in a while. I truly want to thank everyone who's shown support, honesty, and even tough love. I know not all of it was easy to hear, but it mattered. It helped me see things more clearly when my own perspective was clouded by exhaustion and fear. The short version of all of this is simple, even if the emotions behind it aren't. After the argument about everything that's happened, I took him up on his suggestion to reevaluate the relationship. Our lease ends in July, and I told him I think it's best that we no longer live together after that. Not as a punishment, not as an ultimatum, but because forcing proximity, right now, is doing more harm than good. I told him that we can see how things play out. If there's genuine effort, accountability, and change, we'll see. And if there isn't, then that will tell me everything I need to know. Tonight, he's in another room. There's distance between us, physically and emotionally. And while that hurts, there's also a strange sense of relief in not having to pretend everything is okay.